The throne room of Vornath Prime glowed with cold blue fire. Metal pillars reached up like claws and alien banners hung from the ceiling. On the high throne sat Queen Saraxa, ruler of the Varkian Empire, 8 feet tall, armored in living scales that shimmered like obsidian glass. Her eyes burned gold as she watched a group of human prisoners kneel before her. To the Varnathi, humans were weak creatures, small, fragile, emotional. They were a species barely worth notice, and yet somehow, these humans had survived battles that should have destroyed them. To Saraxa, this made them curious. Annoying, but curious. "Bring forward the one who calls himself a scientist," she ordered. Guards pushed a man toward her. Elias Grant, the last surviving human researcher from the fallen colony. His uniform was torn, his face dirty, but his eyes stayed calm. He didn't bow. He didn't tremble. He simply looked up at the massive alien queen who towered over him like a living storm. "So," Saraxa said, her voice deep and sharp, "you claim your kind can fix what even my healers cannot?" Elias nodded once. "Yes, Your Majesty. Your kind's bloodline is dying. Your soldiers' genes are collapsing. I've seen it in your medical records." The hall went silent. Dozens of alien nobles hissed in anger. How could a human speak such words to their queen? Saraxa leaned forward, her claws tapping on the armrest. "And what?" she asked slowly. "Does a soft creature like you think you can offer to fix the blood of gods?" Elias didn't flinch. "Human DNA is adaptive. We've survived every poison, every disease, every extinction. Maybe your people could survive too, if you were willing to mix." The word mix echoed through the chamber. Shock spread like lightning. The nobles began to shout, furious. Saraxa rose from her throne, her wings unfolding in anger. She was so tall, Elias's head barely reached her chest. "You think," she hissed, "that I would breed with a human? That I would lower myself to such filth?" The crowd laughed loudly, their voices harsh and cruel. Saraxa's laughter joined theirs, deep, cold, full of scorn. It filled the hall like thunder. The human did not move. When the laughter faded, Elias simply said, "You can laugh, Your Majesty. But your people are dying. I'm just offering a way to save them." Her smile faded. No one spoke to her like that, not even her generals. She studied his face, his steady eyes, the faint scar along his jaw. He was small, fragile, breakable, yet he looked at her like an equal. It was strange. It was unsettling. "Human," she said finally, "you speak boldly for one so easily crushed." "Truth doesn't fear power," he answered. For a moment the queen felt something she had not felt in years, silence inside herself. Her empire had been built on fear, strength, and dominance. Yet this small man stood before her, calm and unshaken as if her power meant nothing. Her advisor, Lord Kareth, leaned close. "My queen," he whispered, "let us end this insect. His tongue insults the throne." But Saraxa raised her hand. "No, let the insect speak." Elias stepped forward. "Your body is fighting itself, isn't it? You feel weaker. Your healers say it's age, but it's not. It's the decay of your own bloodline. You've bred only among yourselves for centuries. That's why your species is fading. But human genes, they adapt. They fight back." The hall filled with uneasy whispers. Some laughed, others sneered. Saraxa stood still, her golden eyes unblinking. "You suggest," she said slowly, "that I allow human corruption inside my royal blood?" "I suggest," Elias said, "you allow survival inside it." The queen's eyes narrowed. For a long moment no one dared breathe. Then she laughed again, softer this time, almost uncertain. "You are brave, little one. Brave. Or foolish." She turned away, her armor flashing under the throne light. "Take him to the lower cells," she said. "He amuses me. Perhaps I'll use him for something later." The guards moved in. Elias didn't resist as they dragged him away. But before the heavy doors closed behind him, he looked back at her one last time. You can bury the truth, he said, but you can't kill it. Her jaw tightened. Those words followed her long after he was gone. That night, in her private chamber, Syraxa stood before a mirror of black crystal. She removed her armor and studied her reflection, the faint cracks on her once perfect scales, the dull ache that her healers could not cure. She remembered the human's steady gaze, his calm defiance, his words like seeds in her mind. Mix, she whispered, the words strange on her tongue. A union of prey and predator. She almost laughed again. But this time, it didn't come. Something heavier sat inside her chest. A question she didn't want to ask. Was it possible that he was right? Outside her window, the war-torn world of Vornath burned with lightning. Inside the Queen's mind, a spark began to grow, one that would change two species forever. Days turned into weeks, and the human scientist Elias Grant remained locked in the palace's underground lab. The place smelled of metal, cold air, and alien fluids that shimmered under blue light. He was given limited tools, a small table, and one assistant who never spoke. Yet he worked without rest. He studied alien DNA patterns, compared them with human cells stored in his device, and searched for something impossible, harmony between two species. Above him, the grand halls of Queen Syraxa's palace pulsed with power and pride. The queen rarely visited that deep chamber, but somehow her thoughts often wandered there. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw his face, calm, steady, unafraid. It bothered her more than she wanted to admit. One evening, when the storm outside roared like a beast, Syraxa descended to the lower levels. Her guards tried to stop her, but one glance from her golden eyes silenced them. She wanted to see the humans experiment for herself. The doors hissed open. Elias didn't look up at first. He was focused on a strange glowing vial. When he finally noticed her tall shadow, he stood straight and bowed slightly, not out of fear but respect. "Your Majesty," he said. "You came yourself?" "I grow tired of reports," she replied, her voice echoing. "Show me why I shouldn't crush you for wasting my time." Elias didn't panic. Instead, he pointed to a holographic screen showing two streams of DNA, one alien, one human, slowly merging, twisting, forming new shapes. "Because, Majesty," he said, "your people are trapped in a loop. Your blood rejects itself, but human gene adapt. They repair. When I combined them, even in a small test, they didn't fight. They blended." Syraxa stepped closer, her claws tapping on the floor. "You're saying your kind can fix what our creators built to be perfect?" He met her gaze. "Perfection dies, Majesty. Adaptation survives." For a long moment she said nothing. The soft hum of machines filled the silence. Then she walked around the table, inspecting his work. His tools were primitive compared to Vornathi tech, yet his results were undeniable. The screen displayed living cells pulsing with both alien and human energy. "Do you know what would happen if my council saw this?" she asked quietly. Elias nodded. "They'd destroy me, and you'd have to pretend it never existed." Her eyes narrowed. "You understand our laws well for a prisoner." "I understand fear," Elias replied. "It's the same in every species." The queen stared at him. Something inside her shifted. A thought she didn't like. He was so small, yet his words carried the weight of truth. His calmness made her feel exposed, like he could see through the armor she'd worn all her life. Finally, she spoke. "And what would happen if this blending worked? What would you create, human?" Elias looked at her, not up, not down, straight into her golden eyes. "A future, maybe for both of us." Her breath caught for just a second. She hated that feeling, the tightness in her chest, the flicker of curiosity mixed with something deeper. She turned away quickly. "Do your tests, quietly. If anyone finds out, I will deny ever speaking to you." "I don't need your protection," Elias said. "Just time." She gave a cold smile. then time is all you will have. Weeks passed. Siraxa began visiting the lab more often, always under the excuse of inspection. But each visit lasted longer. Sometimes she asked questions. Sometimes she just watched him work. Elias noticed how her tone softened, how the fire in her eyes turned thoughtful. One night, a wounded alien soldier was brought in, shot during a border skirmish. The healers gave up. Siraxa ordered Elias to try his method. He worked for hours using a small serum made from the hybrid formula. Against all belief, the soldier's pulse returned. When the alien gasped back to life, the guards stepped back in shock. The queen stared at Elias, her pride cracking for the first time. "You did this?" she whispered. He nodded slowly. "Not me. Science did." Her mind spun. A human had done what her empire's doctors could not. The thought was impossible. And yet, she had seen it with her own eyes. That night, she returned to her private chamber again. She couldn't sleep. She sat in silence, staring at her hands. Her royal claws that had ended wars, held blades, and signed death orders. Now they trembled slightly. What if the human was right? What if his blood truly carried something her kind had lost? Her reflection looked back at her, proud but tired. The cracks on her scales seemed deeper now. She felt the faint ache inside her chest again. Not pain, but something unexplainable. The next morning, she returned to the lab once more. Elias looked surprised, but didn't show it. "Another inspection, Majesty?" he asked lightly. "No," she said. "A test." She handed him a small vial filled with her own blood. "You have spoken much of my kind's weakness," she said, her tone half challenge, half curiosity. "Now prove it." Elias froze. This was no small gesture. The blood of a royal was sacred, forbidden to test, forbidden to touch. But he saw the look in her eyes, not anger, not pride, but hidden fear. He took the vial carefully. "I'll need a few hours." "Do it," she said, "and tell no one." Hours later, Elias stared at the screen in disbelief. The hybrid test using her royal blood reacted instantly, merging with the human gene pattern more perfectly than any sample before. It was beyond science. It was something new, something alive. When Siraxa returned, he said only one thing. "Your Majesty." It worked. She looked at the screen, at the glowing, pulsing strand of living light, and for the first time in her life, the mighty Queen Siraxa had no words. Mini cliffhanger ending. As she turned to leave, Elias said softly, "You can laugh at me, Majesty, but nature doesn't." Her steps froze. The door hissed closed behind her, but her mind did not stop burning. The silence in the royal palace of Vornith Prime had changed. Whispers moved through the corridors like ghosts. The servants spoke softly of their queen's strange visits to the human's lab. The nobles frowned, their golden eyes filled with suspicion. And deep below the palace, where light was dim and machines hummed softly, something even stranger was happening. Queen Siraxa began visiting the lab every night. At first, she told herself it was only for observation. She wanted to understand the experiment better. But soon she realized that wasn't the truth. Each time she walked into that cold chamber and saw Elias Grant working quietly, something in her chest softened. His calm voice, his steady hands, his unshaken courage, it felt different from the proud warriors she commanded. She stood near the glass table, watching him prepare another test. "You never stop," she said. "Even when failure is certain," Elias smiled faintly. "Failure doesn't scare me, Majesty. Not trying does." Her golden eyes lingered on him. "Humans speak in riddles," she said, though her voice lacked its usual sharpness. "Not riddles," he replied. "Hope." That word made her pause. Hope. It was something her kind had forgotten long ago. The Vornathi only believed in strength. Hope was for the weak. Yet somehow this fragile human made the word sound powerful. Days passed and the experiments continued. Their conversations grew longer. Sometimes they argued, loud, fiery debates that made the lab echo. But even in anger there was connection. The queen began to look forward to those moments even though she didn't understand why. One night she brought him food, alien fruit from the royal garden. "You can't keep eating that human paste," she said. "It smells like melted metal." Elias laughed softly. "I didn't think the Queen of Vornath cared what I eat." She looked away. "I don't. But if you die before the work is finished, it would waste my time." He smiled again, and for the first time she smiled too. But outside the lab, danger was growing. Her generals had started noticing her absence during the night. One of them, Lord Kareth, the tall and cold commander of the Royal Guard, began to suspect betrayal. "The Queen is hiding something," he whispered to the council. "The human is not a prisoner anymore. He's a disease." Plans began to form in the shadows. Back in the lab, Elias showed her something new, a hybrid cell that lived longer than any alien cell before it. "It works," he said proudly. "We're close, Syraxa." She frowned at the sound of her name from his lips. No one had ever spoken it so softly. For a heartbeat, she didn't correct him. "How close?" she asked, her voice quieter than usual. "One final test," he said, "but I'll need your cooperation." Again. She stepped closer, her massive form casting a shadow over him. "You ask much of me, human. And you give nothing you don't choose," Elias said. "That's why it works. You never bend. You decide." The queen studied him. He was so small, yet his spirit filled the room. His voice didn't tremble, even before a being who could end him in a breath. She had met countless warriors, kings, and conquerors, but none who spoke to her like this man. "Very well," she said. "One more test." The next evening, the experiment began. The energy in the lab flickered with a strange blue glow. Elias adjusted the containment field as Syraxa stood inside a glass chamber, calm but tense. The machine hummed louder, pulsing with both alien and human energy. "Stay still," Elias said. "If this works, your cells will accept the adaptive code." "I don't fear pain," she replied. But as the process started, light surrounded her. Her body stiffened, her breath caught, and for a few moments the entire palace seemed to shake. When it was over, she stepped out, breathing hard but standing tall. Elias rushed to the monitor. The reading showed something unbelievable: complete fusion. Her cells had healed faster than ever before. He turned toward her, his eyes wide. "It worked," he whispered. "You're stable. Your genes accepted it." Syraxa stood silently, her chest rising and falling. "You mean," she said slowly, "I am cured?" "Yes," Elias said, his voice trembling with awe. "You're stronger now, more alive." Their eyes met, human brown and alien gold, and for a long, endless moment, there was no throne, no lab, no war, only the sound of two heartbeats in rhythm. That night she didn't leave immediately. They talked for hours, and about Earth, about Vornath, about the stars. Elias told her of oceans, of rain, of the smell of trees. She listened quietly, picturing things her world had never known. When he described the feeling of standing under falling rain, she said softly, "We have storms, but no gentle ones." "You've lived in war too long," he said. "Even the sky forgot how to be kind here." Syraxa looked away. "Kindness breaks you. That's what we were taught." "Then maybe it's time to unlearn," he replied. Something inside her chest moved again. Not pain, not fear, but something she didn't have a word for. The next day, the peace shattered. Lord Kareth stormed into the council chamber.
"The queen hides a human in her palace," he declared.
"And worse, she protects him." The nobles gasped, fury filling their faces. "A human? Working with our queen? It is forbidden." Armies began to prepare in secret. The bond that had formed between a queen and a human was about to be tested by an empire built on pride. Mini cliffhanger ending. That night, thunder shook the palace again. In the dark lab, alarms screamed as soldiers broke in. Elias turned to the door, hearing boots approach. Syraxa's voice echoed down the hall, full of fury. "Touch him," she roared, "and I'll burn the stars themselves." The guards froze. The forbidden bond was no longer hidden. It had begun. The palace of Vornath Prime had never been this quiet. The air was heavy, like the calm before a storm that no one could escape. The queen's secret was out. The whispers were no longer whispers. From the highest towers to the lowest halls, every voice spoke of the same forbidden thing. The alien queen had bonded with a human. Queen Syraxa stood at her balcony as the red dawn rose over her city. Below her, crowds gathered, Nobles glaring, guards uneasy, soldiers confused. Their queen, the untouchable ruler of the Vornathi, now stood accused of weakness. Her golden armor reflected the rising sun, but her heart felt colder than ever. The words of her generals echoed in her mind. "Your Majesty, you have betrayed our blood. You've brought shame to the throne. You must destroy him. Now." But she couldn't. In the chamber below, Elias Grant lay unconscious, bruised and battered. He had fought back when the soldiers stormed the lab, but they had overpowered him. When Syraxa found him lying in blood and broken glass, something inside her had cracked, something deep and uncontrollable. She had carried him herself to her private healing chamber, ignoring the horrified looks of her guards. Now, she watched the sun rise, her claws clenched tight. For the first time in her reign, the queen felt trapped between two worlds, her duty and her heart. A soft voice interrupted her thoughts. It was her royal healer, Drinath, an old alien with silver eyes. "My queen," he said quietly, "his body will recover. Humans are resilient," she turned sharply. "And the council? They demand your presence at noon," Drinath said. "They will call for his execution." Syraxa's golden eyes flickered like fire. "If they do, they will face mine." The healer hesitated. "Majesty, your strength is not infinite. The scans we ran last night, there's something strange." She frowned. "Strange?" Drinath held up a glowing tablet. "Your cells are changing again, but not from decay. They're multiplying differently. There's an unfamiliar rhythm. It's as if your body is—" He stopped, his voice trembling. "Speak," she demanded. Drinath took a step back. "Majesty, it's as if your body is carrying two patterns, your own and his." The room froze. The queen blinked, not understanding. "That's impossible," but the screen did not lie. Her vitals pulsed with two heartbeats. One powerful ancient, hers. The other, new, softer, smaller, human. Syraxa's voice broke into a whisper. "No, it can't be." Drinath dropped to one knee. "Majesty, it appears you are with child." The queen staggered back, gripping the railing. She was the strongest being in her empire, a warrior born to rule, a goddess of war. Yet in that moment she felt fragile. 1,000 thoughts crashed through her mind. Fear, confusion, wonder. She remembered Elias's calm voice, his unshaken gaze, the way he had protected her from the soldiers even when he knew it meant death. And now this, a life, a creation neither human nor alien. She whispered to herself, "A child of two worlds." Drinath lowered his head. "This truth must be hidden, Majesty. If the council learns of it, they will not stop until both you and the child are gone." Syraxa's jaw tightened. "Then let them come," she said. "Let them see what happens when they try to destroy the future." Later that day, the great council gathered. Hundreds of nobles filled the hall, their armor gleaming, their voices sharp like blades. When the queen entered, silence fell instantly. Lord Kareth stepped forward, bowing low but his tone dripping with venom. "My queen, the council demands justice. The human is a threat to our purity, to our survival. His death will restore your honor." Syraxa's golden eyes swept over the crowd. "My honor does not need restoring," she said coldly. "And the human is under my protection." Murmurs erupted. Disbelief, outrage, fury. Kareth raised his voice. "Your protection has blinded you. Look at yourself. You are not the same queen we once followed." Her wings flared open in anger. "You're right," she said, her voice shaking the room. "I am not. I have seen beyond your walls. I have seen courage in a creature you call weak. I have seen truth in what you call filth. And I will no longer let pride lead my people to extinction." Kareth's eyes widened. "Then you are no longer fit to rule." The soldiers moved, their weapons raised. In a heartbeat, Syraxa's claws shot forward, glowing with energy. "The first who steps toward me," she warned, "will not live to regret it." The hall erupted in chaos. Blasters charged, wings flared, shouts filled the air. But before anyone could strike, the ceiling shook violently. Explosions outside. A rebellion had begun. The nobles had called their armies to seize the throne. Syraxa's guards rushed in. "Majesty, the outer gates have fallen." The queen turned toward the sound of distant war. Her empire, her legacy, was burning, and all because she dared to care for something not of her blood. Her eyes glowed fiercely. "Elias," she whispered. She rushed back to the healing chamber. He was awake now, weak but alive. When he saw her face, he tried to rise. "You look tired, Majesty." "Stay down," she said quickly. "They're coming for us," he coughed, forcing a weak smile. "Let them come. I still owe you one miracle." She stared at him for a long second, torn between fury and fear. "You gave me more than that," she said softly. "You gave me something I didn't think I could have again." "What's that?" he asked. "Life." Smoke rose above the shining towers of Vornath Prime. The proud empire of the Vornathi was tearing itself apart. Armies once loyal to Queen Syraxa now marched against her palace, their banners painted with the symbol of rebellion, a single golden eye crossed by a blade. Inside the palace walls, alarms screamed and lights flickered red. The marble corridors that had once echoed with music now shook with explosions. The Queen's guards fought to hold the line, but they were outnumbered 10-1. In the upper chamber, Syraxa stood before a window, watching her city burn. Her reflection glowed faintly. Golden energy pulsed beneath her skin stronger than ever. She could feel it, her body changing, her heartbeat no longer alone. Two rhythms beat within her chest, hers, and the small, steady echo of life growing inside. Behind her, Elias Grant struggled to stand. His shoulder was still bandaged, his face pale from blood loss, yet his voice stayed calm. "You can't face all of them alone," he said. Syraxa turned, her armor half-formed from living metal. "I have faced empires alone." "Not this time," Elias replied. "This time they fight because of me." She stepped closer, towering over him, eyes fierce but soft. "No, they fight because they fear what we've created. They fear change. They always have." For a moment they just looked at each other, the queen of an alien race and the fragile human who had changed her destiny. Outside, thunder shook the sky, but inside there was only silence and the quiet bond between them, forbidden, yet undeniable. The door burst open. Captain Rias, one of her loyal guards, fell to one knee. "My queen." "The rebels have breached the outer walls. Lord Kareth leads them himself. He demands your surrender." Syraxa's claws flexed. "Then he shall have my answer." She strode toward the grand balcony. From below, thousands of soldiers filled the palace courtyard, aliens with shining armor, all pointing their weapons upward. Kareth stood at the front, his voice booming through a speaker. "Syraxa, step down now. End this shame before it consumes us all." The queen spread her wings, golden light streaming from her body. "You call me shame?" she thundered. "I call myself evolution." Gasps echoed through the crowd as her aura flared brighter than the suns above. "Look at what we've become," she continued. "A race dying behind its pride. You fear a human's touch more than your own extinction." Kareth raised his weapon. "Enough! You've lost your mind, Majesty." Elias appeared behind her on the balcony, limping but standing tall. "Maybe," he said loudly, "she's just found her heart." The crowd roared with rage. Blasters charged. In the next instant, the first shot fired, and chaos exploded. Bolts of plasma streaked through the air. Guards screamed. The queen leapt into the storm, her claws slicing through enemy lines. Every strike from her sent shockwaves across the courtyard. Her power was greater than ever, each movement faster, stronger, unstoppable. Elias took cover near the balcony pillars, helping the wounded guards reload their weapons. "Keep firing toward the west gate," he shouted. Through smoke and lightning, he saw Syraxa fighting like a living comet. The rebels couldn't touch her, but there were too many of them. For every soldier she struck down, 3 more appeared. Then he saw Kareth, towering in dark armor, charging toward her with a blade of blue fire. "Syraxa!" Elias shouted. She turned just in time. Their weapons clashed, the sound like thunder splitting the sky. Sparks flew as Kareth roared, "You're no queen anymore." "I am more than that," she screamed back, forcing him to his knees. But as she struck the final blow, a flash of light came from the crowd. A plasma shot. Elias threw himself forward without thinking. The blast hit him square in the chest. The world slowed. Syraxa froze. The sound of battle faded into nothing. Elias fell into her arms, blood glowing faintly under alien light. "No," she whispered, her voice trembling. "No, no, no." He smiled weakly, eyes half open. "Guess I owed you one more miracle." Tears, bright golden tears, fell from her eyes, burning tiny marks into his armor. "Stay with me," she begged. "Do you hear me, human? You will not die." His fingers brushed her cheek. "You said..." We'd changed two worlds. Looks like we did, and then... Silence, her heart screamed. The golden energy inside her body erupted, rising like fire around her. Every soldier on the battlefield felt the ground shake. Kareth stepped back in horror as light exploded from her wings, the wrath of a queen. Syraxa rose slowly, holding Elias's lifeless body. Her voice was no longer a voice, it was a roar that split the clouds. "You wanted a pure world," she shouted. "Then burn in its purity." Golden energy blasted outward, sweeping across the courtyard like a storm. Armor melted, weapons shattered. Rebels screamed as the light devoured everything in its path. The sky turned white. When the light faded, silence fell. The entire army lay broken. The banners of rebellion turned to ash. Kareth lay at her feet, too weak to move. She looked down at him, eyes glowing brighter than suns. "You called me tainted," she said. "But I'm the future you tried to kill." Then she turned away, carrying Elias back into the palace. Inside, the corridors were still burning, but the fighting was over. Every living guard bowed as their queen passed. Yet she felt no victory, only emptiness. She placed Elias on the healing bed, touching his face gently. "You fought for me when no one else would," she whispered. "Now I will fight for you." She felt a faint movement in her abdomen, a pulse tiny yet strong. It was not grief alone that filled her now. It was resolve. The queen who once mocked the idea of love now carried its living proof inside her. The once glorious palace of Vornath Prime lay in ruins. Columns cracked. Fires burned. The air smelled of ash and melted stone. The rebellion had been crushed, but so had everything the Vornathi once knew. The golden banners of the queen no longer fluttered proudly. They hung torn, blackened, whispering in the wind. In the silent royal chamber, Queen Syraxa knelt beside a lifeless body. Elias Grant, the human who had dared to defy her empire, lay motionless on the healing bed. His skin was pale, his heartbeat gone. Around him the machines hummed softly as if mourning. Syraxa's claws rested on his chest. Her armor was shattered, her wings scarred, yet she did not care. Her golden eyes, once burning with command, were now dim with grief. "You were supposed to live," she whispered. Her voice broke for the first time in her life. "You were supposed to see the world you changed." She placed her forehead against his. Her tears, molten gold, fell silently onto his skin. "You told me humans were weak," she said, trembling. "But you were stronger than any of us." For a long while, the Queen of Vornath said nothing. Then slowly, something inside her began to stir. The sorrow did not fade, it shifted. It grew hot. It grew fierce. It turned into something primal, rage. Outside, the surviving rebels had begun to regroup beyond the city walls. Broken, desperate, but still full of hate. They would not stop. They would try again, and this time they would come for her unborn child. Syraxa stood, her shadow stretching long across the chamber. "No," she whispered. "Not again. Never again." The golden veins across her body flared bright, filling the room with blinding light. The entire palace seemed to tremble at her awakening. She walked through the shattered halls, every step leaving glowing footprints on the ground. Her soldiers, the few loyal ones who remained, fell to their knees as she passed. "Your Majesty," Captain Rias said weakly. "The army's outside. They've surrounded the city." Syraxa's voice was calm but colder than death. "Then open the gates." Rias blinked in shock. "Open? But, my queen, we cannot." She turned her gaze on him, and for a moment he felt her power pressing against his soul. "Do as I command." He bowed his head. "Yes, Majesty." The gates of Vornath Prime opened. The rebels cheered, thinking victory was near. They marched forward, weapons raised, ready to destroy what was left of the queen's rule. Then they saw her. Syraxa stepped out onto the great bridge, her armor now glowing like the heart of a star. The sky behind her swirled with storm clouds, lightning dancing in golden spirals. Her wings stretched wide, broken in parts but magnificent. The rebel leader, Lord Kareth, shouted from the front line, "You've lost everything, Syraxa." "You stand alone!" Syraxa raised her head slowly. "Alone?" Her voice echoed across the battlefield. "No, I carry 2 lives within me, and that is enough to end you." She lifted her claws, and the air itself seemed to obey her command. Golden energy erupted from her body, forming waves that rolled through the sky like thunder. The ground split. The rebel soldiers staggered, shielding their faces from the blinding light. Kareth charged forward, his blade screaming with plasma. Monster, you've doomed us all. Syraxa's eyes blazed. No, she said softly. I've saved what's left. Their weapons clashed once more, but this time there was no contest. Her power was absolute. She struck him down with a single blow. The impact shook the ground, sending shockwaves across the valley. Kareth's armor shattered, his body dissolving into dust. The rest of the rebel army broke. They fled in terror, leaving only the sound of the wind and fire behind. When it was over, Syraxa stood on the battlefield surrounded by silence. Her golden light began to fade. Her body trembled. Her power, the rage, the grief, had burned everything. She fell to her knees, her claws pressed against her stomach, where the faint heartbeat pulsed stronger than before. She closed her eyes, whispering, "You will live. No matter what happens to me, you will live." The storm above her began to calm. The air cooled. Somewhere deep inside the palace, the healing machines continued to hum, then out a sound, a soft, slow beep. Syraxa's eyes snapped open. It came again. Beep, beep, beep. She rose unsteadily and turned toward the chamber. The sound grew louder. Hope and disbelief tangled in her chest. When she entered the healing room, her breath caught Elias's chest. Still, cold moments ago, was moving. Faintly, weakly, but moving. The golden light around his body flickered, reacting to her presence. The energy from her earlier outburst had somehow flowed through the palace into him, reawakening what had been lost. She rushed to his side, placing her clawed hand on his cheek. "Elias, can you hear me?" His lips parted slightly. A whisper escaped, barely a breath. "Syraxa?" Tears streamed down her face. "Yes, it's me. You came back." He tried to smile, eyes half open. "I heard you." Screaming. "I couldn't leave you like that." She laughed through her tears, soft, trembling laughter. "You stubborn creature. You really are impossible." His gaze drifted down toward her glowing chest. "You're different, brighter." She took his hand and placed it over her heart. "You made me so." Outside, the first sunlight broke through the storm clouds. The fires began to die. The city was silent, broken but breathing again. Syraxa stood at the window, Elias resting beside her. The golden glow inside her dimmed into a soft, gentle warmth. She looked at the horizon and spoke quietly. "They will come again. They always do." Elias nodded weakly. "Then we'll be ready. Together." She placed her clawed hand over her stomach, feeling the second heartbeat beneath. "No," she whispered. "All three of us." The great city of Vornath Prime no longer echoed with war. The fires had gone cold, and the smoke had faded into the clear skies of a new dawn. Where once banners of conquest had flown, new ones now shimmered, silver and blue, marked not with the crest of a single species, but two hands joined together, one human, one alien. It had been a year since the rebellion fell, a year since Queen Syraxa's wrath reshaped the course of history. Now, peace had begun to bloom like a fragile flower pushing through ash. Inside the palace, sunlight spilled through broken windows now repaired with glass from Earth. The air smelled of new metal and clean soil. There were gardens again, not for ceremony or display, but for life. Elias Grant walked slowly through the corridors, his body still carrying scars from the battle. He had recovered, but his left arm bore a faint golden mark where Syraxa's energy had brought him back from death. He smiled as he entered the inner chamber. There she was, Syraxa, once feared across galaxies, now sitting quietly beside a cradle carved from crystal. Her armor was gone. She wore a simple robe of dark blue, her golden hair loose around her shoulders. She looked up as Elias approached. Her smile was small but warm. "You're walking better," she said. "Doctor said I'd limp forever," Elias replied, chuckling softly. "Guess I like proving people wrong," she smirked. "A habit we share." He stepped closer, his eyes falling to the cradle. Inside it, something small and radiant stirred. The infant whose heartbeat had once pulsed within the queen's chest. The child of two worlds. The baby had soft blue skin like hers, but human-shaped eyes, brown and warm like his. Tiny golden veins glowed faintly beneath the surface like threads of light woven through flesh. When the child opened his eyes, both parents fell silent. Those eyes glowed gold and brown. Both, Saraxa whispered. He sees through two worlds. Elias nodded. He is two worlds. For a long time they just watched him. The child reached up, grabbing Saraxa's claw with his small fingers. Her heart, the heart that had commanded armies, melted completely. I never thought I could feel this, she said quietly. Elias smiled. Love? She shook her head softly. Peace. But outside the palace walls, not all shared that peace. Beyond the borders of Vornath, whispers of discontent still stirred. Alien factions refused to accept a queen who carried human blood. Human colonies on the nearby moons questioned Elias's loyalty, calling him the aliens' consort. War had ended, but prejudice had not. And yet, something stronger than hate had begun to grow. Curiosity. Some aliens began to learn human science. Some humans began to study alien art. Mixed teams rebuilt the broken bridges between worlds. The name of their new hope spread across the stars. The Union of Light. One evening, as the sun set over the palace, Saraxa stood on the balcony holding the child. The sky was painted in gold and violet. Elias joined her, wrapping a cloak around her shoulders. They'll come for him one day, he said quietly. Both sides will. I know, she replied. Some will want to worship him. Others will want to destroy him. What will we do? Elias asked. Her eyes glowed softly as she looked down at the sleeping baby. We will teach him what neither world ever learned. That strength isn't about blood. It's about choice. She turned to Elias, her expression gentle. You gave me that lesson, he shook his head. No, you learned it yourself. Suddenly the air shimmered with light. A messenger drone hovered before them, projecting a hologram of the alien council. Their leader bowed low. Your Majesty, he said nervously. The outer colonies request your presence. They wish to discuss alliance and peace. Saraxa and Elias exchanged glances. For the first time in Vornathi history, humans and aliens would sit at the same table, not as conquerors and slaves, but as equals. The Queen nodded. Tell them I will come, but I bring one more with me. The messenger blinked. Majesty? She smiled. My son, let them see what the future truly looks like. That night, as the stars glittered outside, Elias sat by the window watching Saraxa rock their child to sleep. He could hear her humming softly, an ancient alien lullaby that sounded almost human. He thought about everything that had happened, the cruelty, the laughter, the defiance, the war, and the birth of something entirely new. He whispered, You know, when I first saw you, I thought you'd kill me. Without opening her eyes, she replied, I nearly did. They both laughed quietly. Then she looked down at the baby, who was now fast asleep, his tiny chest glowing faintly with golden light. He will never know the chains we wore, she said. He will never bow to fear. Elias reached out, taking her hand gently. He will know who he is, both of us. As the night deepened, the Queen placed the child in his cradle. A soft beam of light from the moons fell across the baby's face, illuminating his features, the first being of both bloodlines, sleeping peacefully under twin suns. Saraxa whispered, Sleep, little one. The stars are yours now. Elias stood beside her, his arm around her shoulders. They both watched in silence. Beyond the palace, the cities of both species began to rebuild. Ships flew together, human and alien, side by side. Old wounds started to heal.